Welcome back to the Educated Podcast, the show that unlocks the real stories and innovations behind the Doctor of Education experience. I'm your host, Dr. Minerva, and today I'm very excited to be speaking with Dr. Ketsia Sadler. She is an educator, a healthcare professional, and a community leader dedicated to empowering others through education and wellness. Driven by her motto, which I love, no more, pay less, she founded College Cafe, consulting and financial education to help families navigate affordable paths to higher education. With a doctorate in health education from Teachers College, Columbia University, and a nurse of 32 years, 26 years of which she has been a school nurse, Dr. Sadler serves as a public elementary school nurse and leads Woman Wellness, a holistic self-care platform for women. Deeply committed to public service, she serves on her local board of health since 2012 and is active in the chapters of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, and the National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Sadler, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Minerva. I'm so excited to be here. When I saw your podcast, I kept saying to myself, when am I going to be a guest on her show? So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for being here. So let's get down to business. Many people associate health degrees with hospital leadership or academia. You chose to serve as an elementary school nurse. How does your doctorate change the way you approach school nursing?
Well, I think I'm very unique in that you don't find too many school nurses with a doctoral degree. I think I only know 2 other women who do it. But my thing is, when I became a school nurse, it was in order to help students develop healthy lifestyles they could take into adulthood. So I feel that I went to Montclair State University to get my master's in health education and then going on to Teachers College for doctorate in the same educational field, same subject, would help to enhance my knowledge in order to be able to transmit it to my students. So while we may not have really intense conversations, but I can pull from the different webinars and workshops that I attend to be able to talk to a child to say, okay, this is why you should be eating fruits and vegetables, why you should go to phys ed class. One of the big things with my young ladies, I have 4th through 6th graders, and they're going through their menstrual cycles. They're like, oh, I'm having pain, I don't want to take class. I said, no, exercise is good for you. So really helping students to make decisions that they'll incorporate themselves and be able to take home and say, so that's where I'd much rather be. I realized after doing about 3 years of bedside nursing that that's not what I wanted to do. And so that's how I made the transition to work in the elementary schools.
Wow. That's really incredible that you decided from bedside nursing that you wanted to be in school nursing. Like, what was it that you were seeing in the day-to-day that made you decide that school nursing would be a better fit as opposed to bedside nursing?
So I was working at the time on a cardiac unit, and most of my patients would come in for an elective procedure called an angioplasty. But for some rare occasions, more often than not, the patients would have had a heart attack, which caused them to need the procedure as an emergent as opposed to being elective. And in patient teaching on discharge or even during their time in the hospital, they would say, I've been eating healthy and I've been exercising. Why did I have this heart attack? And so what I realized that for some people, they didn't realize, their genetic tendencies that would cause them to possibly have cardiac issues or their lifestyles as children. I'll share my age. I'm 58. So I'm from that age group where when you went to school and had parties, people were bringing in chips and sodas, things like that. Now you can't have that at a party because there's so many more chemicals in it. But what were we eating as children that might be affecting us now as adults? And what are we finding at 50 that if, let's say, diabetes or heart disease is genetically part of your family's makeup, it may not have affected you in your 20s, but now you're in your 40s, you're exercising, but yet still you had a heart attack. So I really felt that children needed to start understanding about genetics, lifestyle, and how you can make changes that will prolong the inevitable, as I call it. So if diabetes is part of the genetic makeup in your family, you don't need to be diabetic at 20 because you're not eating properly, you're not exercising, you're not taking your medication if you need it. But what can we do to ensure that, okay, if you're going to have to deal with those things, then you're in your 50s and 60s when our body is starting to break down naturally anyway. So that's why I felt that, okay, I need to be with the little ones. And not the little ones, but I like that fourth through sixth grade age group because they're curious, but they're not too grown to not want to listen, although every now and then they do. But I felt that it was important to be with them and be able to talk to them on a daily basis. Why do you need to eat vegetables? Why should you move around? Why is it important to use the bathroom? So many kids don't want to have a bowel movement in school. Why not? They're afraid of the smell. I said, but everyone smells. So that's a constant conversation. It smells for everyone. If you're not going, you need to get rid of it. Why are you holding on to it? So I kind of joke with them and say, why are you keeping it? Your body doesn't need it. That's why your stomach's hurting. Go. And so they come after lunch. My stomach hurts. Go in my bathroom, use it. They come out like, do you feel better? Anything come out? Yes. And they feel better. So typical little conversations like that every day with students. So that's why bedside was not it for me. I do like the teaching aspect of it, but bedside is not where I felt I needed to be. So that's how the school nursing decision came about.
Yeah, I'm glad you found your purpose and your passion. And like, who would know that, the children are holding on to things that they need to release? So
Right. And
bravo
they
in
do.
figuring that out.
They do.
So tell me about the why of your EDD. What inspired you to pursue a doctorate of education rather than a PhD?
So I did a little bit of my research and saw that the PhDs were a lot more research focused. And that's not me. I want to be more of the teaching aspect of it. And then to backtrack, when I started college, my intention was to major in biology, go on to medical school, have that terminal doctoral degree, doctor of medicine. And when I didn't get into medical school, I kind of had to pivot. And so ended up me and my husband getting married. And in conversation with him, he's like, well, why not go to nursing school? So that's how the nursing part became my career. And so again, started working as a nurse, realizing that the promotional aspect of health is where I wanted to be as opposed to reactive. Because to me, by the time you're in the hospital, whatever has happened has happened. Now we're trying to fix it. So I want to be on the end of let's try to prevent it from happening sooner than it needs to. And so the other reason we're going for the EDD too is I started looking at different schools. Do I want to do an online program? Do I want to do something in person? And when I saw that Columbia at Teachers College had an EDD program close to home, the commute was quick, and I was not going to have to take the GREs again, I emailed one of the professors to ask a few questions. She emailed me back right away and said, look, I'm available to talk right now. So we had a conversation. I said, to me, if the professor is going to reach out that quickly, I felt that, okay, this is the place I needed to be. And logistically, it was a convenient place to go. And my advisor was awesome. And so I really enjoyed being a student in the EDD program.
Wonderful. And it sounds like you were more concerned about taking the GREs than the cost of going to graduate school. Like, what did you do or what did you have in your mind in terms of like focusing on your end goal as opposed to the financial responsibility that it will take to actually complete a doctorate?
Right. I don't think I really focused on the finances as much because I said I knew that I wanted to do it. So I knew I had College Cafe, I could see what scholarships were available. So I wasn't worried about the cost. I was more focused on enhancing myself as an individual, as a woman, as a nurse to be able to have information for students. And then looking at the schools, I want to be able to say, people say, well, where did you get your doctorate from? To be able to have a name that people could kind of put some respect on the name. Not that other schools are not as good, but for me, and also I have my undergraduate degree from Barna. So I kind of joke sometimes and say, well, I'm like Michelle Obama. I have 2 Ivy League degrees, so a little bit of that personal piece of it. But so like I said, the finances was not an issue.
How did you complete your doctorate financially? Did you have scholarships? Did you take out financial aid? Did you get workplace assistance?
So my first year was great. I got an amazing scholarship that first year. The next couple years, well, the next 3 years, I did take out loans, but my job did have some tuition reimbursement. So that did help a little bit. I still have a little bit that I still have to pay back because just trying to, as much as I talk about scholarships and everything, like I just didn't have the bandwidth to be looking for scholarships and study and do everything else I needed to do. But there's so much money out there for doctoral programs that students should not have to graduate owing a lot. So I had scholarships and I took out loans, but and got tuition reimbursement. So I say that to students, see if the companies are offering tuition reimbursement for your degree. Why not? So yeah. And I did not want to take the GREs again because I felt like when I took it for my master's, I remember meeting with the director of the program and he said, well, your GRE scores were not that great, but I see that you were a biology major at Barnard, which is a tough school. So we're going to let you in and see how you do. I did fine in the program. I think I might have only gotten two B or B pluses. And a lot of times it's because the professor was more focused, my lower grades on my papers were more grammar focused, not even the content of my work. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm not in an English master's program. This is a health education program, but I understand writing is important. So that's sort of backtrack to the GRE. I felt like you're putting so much emphasis on this number on this test, which is not representative of how I'm going to do as a student in your program. So I was like, no, I can't. At that point, I was in my 40s. I'm like, I am not doing another test. I'm like, I think for someone who's married with two kids with a full-time job, the fact that the person wants to do this program, you should be in and not have to stress over a test that absolutely has nothing to do with how well you're going to do and what you're going to do later on. So I was quite happy to not do that again.
Rightfully so, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
speaking about being married with a full-time job and a family, for listeners out there who are working full-time, raising a family, and dreaming of going back to school, how did you balance a 30 plus year nursing career, family life, and a doctoral program without burning out?
Well, the one thing that had to stop is at the time, as a school nurse, I was working per diem at a local hospital. Within a month, I had to stop that because I would work night shifts usually on a Friday night. So if I come home from work in the morning, I have to sleep at some point and still be a wife and mother and be a student. So I had to cut that job out. So in order to have time to be a wife and mother. But my children were older at the time. My older son was halfway through college. The younger son was halfway through high school. So they were a little bit independent. But whatever opportunities to support the younger one in his activities, I'd probably be there with a book trying to read. Lots of reading in a doctoral program. That's the bulk of it that you're doing. So whenever I had time to read, bring a book with me, I was there. But at least as a school nurse, I had the opportunity to support him and be in the stands cheering for him at whatever activity was going on. So it was just finding that balance to do what I needed to do. With all the activities that I do, most of those did not start till after I was done with the doctoral program. So yeah, there's no way I could have been a student. People may do it, but for me, I know there's no way I could have been a student and as involved in the community as I was. I was on the board of health, so we had monthly meetings, so that wasn't as intensive, but everything else would not have been happening. Absolutely not. Church was primary. We did go to church on Sunday. I was involved with ministries, but other than that, that was my community involvement there because I was still teaching Sunday school and things like that.
That Thanks for contextualizing that. And it sounds like your spouse was totally instrumental and supportive for you to be able to release your per diem job to focus on school.
No, he was. He was, and he saw that it was something that I wanted to do. And my children watched me as a mother and a student. When I started nursing school, my older son was a year old. And then to become a school nurse, I had to take classes. I needed about 6 of them to get the certification required to work in public schools, then going for my master's. And he was definitely during the master's, he was supportive because I remember one summer I worked summer school from 8 to 3, and then I had evening classes on Montclair's campus. So he was definitely being the dad at home, cooking and everything, but he's a good cook anyway. So he handled those home responsibilities. And then with the doctoral program, back to school nights, I had a couple times I had to be in class. So he knew, okay, I have to go and represent and be there to get the information from the teachers to be able to talk to me later on. I think with one class I said, look, do you mind if I record what you said in case I forget when my wife asked me these questions? So he was supportive in that because he knew I had a vision for where I wanted to be in my career.
Beautiful. Yeah, it sounds like everything you mentioned will be that much more harder without that village or that
Mm,
support behind you. So I'm
mm.
glad you were able to push through and push forward. And speaking about catalysts, right? You and your husband created your organization, the College Cafe, which grew out of your personal journey helping your own sons get into Syracuse University and Cornell University. What was the absolute biggest eye opening experience during that process, which made you realize other families desperately may need help?
So the backstory to that is when the oldest was in high school, I think his sophomore year, we're like, okay, let's start doing the college search and whatever. And so I asked him, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Of course, that's the typical question we ask our kids. And so he gave me 3 interests. We start going online, looking at different schools. We found Syracuse. Said, okay, Syracuse has your interest. And on site again, we see that they've got a summer program. Great. You can go for 6 weeks, get 6 college credits. The cost was not within our budget. I was like, oh, that's not going to work. And so random conversation with a coworker who mentioned a program in Paterson, New Jersey, which is about a 30-minute drive from home. She said, look, this program has an affiliation, a relationship with Syracuse. That's all she needed to say. I called up, made an appointment for an interview with him. And so through that program, he as a student would have meetings twice a month, different workshops where they talked about all different aspects of the college application process, the essay, SATs, all kind of things. And for the parents, we had monthly meetings where he would bring in speakers to talk about the financial aid process. So everything I would learn, I would email to parents I knew who had kids his age. Oh, this is what I learned today. This is what I learned today. And so it blossomed into people saying, hey, add my sister, add my cousin, add whomever to your email list. And so I started sharing information using my Gmail, getting caught up in Gmail jail sometimes. And so eventually over the years, I had to make it a more formalized organization company. And so the biggest takeaway is that we really don't understand the cost of college, for one, whether it's a student or family. We don't understand the process because you really can't start junior year of high school. There's things that your child should be doing, even in middle school, to help prepare for that process. And then we don't understand the realities of the realities of the cost of it because we're like, oh, my kid's going to go to school. And you find a school that now, when I look, I'm a pack rat. I found paperwork from my undergrad school. It was $12,000 for tuition in the second half of the 80s. And then if you tack on room and board, that was maybe another 6 to 8,000. So you were paying maybe 25,000 for the entire year at Barnard. Tuition now is by itself is like 50,000. And then when you tack on room and board, you're talking another 15, 20,000. So now you're talking 70,000 for school. So when I talk to families, I talk to them about, okay, how much it's going to cost? What does your child really want to do? Do they know what they want to do? And have conversation and watch your child to see what it is that they do naturally that may translate into a career for them. Okay, the parent who's a doctor, your child may not become a doctor. That may not be where they are. And then I also talk to parents and students about how not everyone, well, let me preface that by saying, when I used to hear people say that my child is not college material, I had to switch it and say, no, your child's career may not need a college 4-year degree. But if your child's going to be a plumber, mechanic, and a hairdresser, they're going to have to sit in class, take notes, read, pass some type of certification exam before you work on someone's car, their plumbing, or in their hair. So if that's where their strengths are, let's find the things to support them because we all need it. You know, the doctor who's performing surgeries He's gonna need if his toilet is running, he's gonna need somebody to come fix that for him. Okay? So that's the reality of it. And children can graduate high school or go on to a trade school and graduate making even more money than the person who's going on to medical school initially. So again, talking to families about where is your child's skill set and what can they do during high school to gain credits to be able to pay for a college degree. Maybe your child may go to a high school where you graduate with an associate's degree. So now you're halfway through with your bachelor's degree already. So where are you going to go now? So those are the conversations that we have. And like I said, I've learned that parents just don't understand the complexities of it. And what's makes it even worse now is with that big, beautiful bill that was passed. In my day, or even up until a couple years ago, when a child got a financial aid package, it might say something like they'll say something like you can apply for a Parent Plus loan, making it seem like it's part of financial aid, but it's not. You have to apply for a loan to help pay the balance of what it's going to cost for your child if the school is only awarding them a certain amount. Before, you could apply and maybe take out $30,000 a year for a school if that's what you're going to need for the 4 years. Now this bill has changed it where parents can only borrow $65,000 per child for the 4 years. So that's a shift. You really need to start. So you're going down from, if you're doing 30,000 for 4 years, that's 120,000. Now you can only borrow 65,000. So where are you getting that money from? Now let's have some real conversations now. What does your child want to be? Do they need to start off at a community college and then transfer? That might be the reality. Because when you think about it, when you go to your doctor, do you ask your doctor if you don't even ask where they went to medical school? So is it really going to matter if they start off at a community college first? Doesn't really matter. The point is, I need my hip surgery done. How many hip surgeries have you done? And even then, any orthopedics are not, I'm going to use orthopedics for instance. The doctor who's good at fixing shoulders may not be good at fixing knees. So that's the conversation you want to have. So it really doesn't matter if the doctor went to a community college. You want to know, how many knee surgeries have you done? What has been the outcome? How many complications do your patients have? So that's how my conversations with families, students, and when I do my workshops have shifted into looking at your strengths to get scholarship money. Because College Cafe, we don't want you to take out loans. There's so much scholarship money available that we're going to figure out how your strengths will translate into money. So whether you're book smart, if you're an athlete, an artist, whatever those skills are that you have, should be able to get you some money to pay for school so your parents don't have to take out extra loans and you're not graduating with a crazy amount of debt. So that was my catalyst behind starting College Cafe, continuing and constantly talking to families about the whole process and the cost of it and the realities of making sure that you're getting more bang for your buck. Colleges are businesses. So how are you going to make sure that your child graduates and goes on to whatever graduate school they want, or can they get a job when they're done after those 4 years or 5 if they have to? Because we're not doing 6 years.
Yeah, you beautifully laid out the cost, hypothetically, of course, of tuition and then room and board, right? That's not even talking about the books. So that's a total another cost that I'm sure many parents or folks may not initially consider, because tuition is what literally stares most in the face and where a student is going to live. But I want to go back because you mentioned preparing students even from middle school. So what would that look like, preparing students for middle school? And are middle school students a part of the College Cafe, or is it from high school and above?
My target audience would be seventh graders. And I say that because in seventh grade now, by the time you get to eighth grade, you're thinking of applying to high schools. So in middle school, there are some colleges that have programs like Johns Hopkins, for instance. They actually start kids in the summer since like the 5th and 6th grade. So you can spend time on a college campus already getting that acclimated to what it's like to have to get up on your own and go to class and have professors teach you. So in middle school, you can already start that familiarity with being away from home if the program allows students to live away, or if it's a day program. Either way, you're still outside of your norm. Students can start looking at the SAT. Some students are looking at these standardized tests in seventh and eighth grade. And I say to students that the people who are scoring high on the test, yes, some people are really smart and they do well on tests. But for a lot of other people, it's a struggle. And so they may already start going to a Huntington or having a tutor who's helping them learn the strategies to be able to answer the questions on these tests. So that's what you can be doing in middle school. And then also in terms of looking at high school, maybe you want to go to one that will allow you to graduate with an associate's degree out of high school. So that's why the middle school is important, because you're kind of looking at your trajectory. Where do you want to go? Or maybe we'll look at, okay, the child is good with their hands. Okay, so maybe they might want to go to a more technical high school. And everything's computerized now. Maybe you're really good with computers. Maybe you want to, that's what your major wants to be, or you want to go to an academy where they have an IT focus. So that's where middle school is important, to kind of help guide the children to the school that's going to give them the best education so they can go on to the college or trade school that's going to help them with their future career.
I'm glad that trade schools are also a part of this conversation, because they are important, right? The plumber, the HVAC, the beautician, they are great trades that are necessary for a lot of us, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a conversation. I was at a college fair last spring and a young man came up to my table. I said, so, hey, so what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to be a welder. And he looked so sad when he said it. And I said, sir, I said, have people not encouraged you? And he's kind of like, yeah. And I said, take a look at this building. I said, that's you as a welder putting this building together. I said, the doctor's using equipment in the operating room. That's you putting those things together. I said, so don't let anyone make you think that your job is less than. So, I mean, I think his face totally changed. And I was at a program where the school was proud of the fact that 95% of their kids go on to four-year schools. That's great. But what about the 5% whose future career does not need that? That 5% is going to support those other 95 in whatever careers they have. So we really need to look at our children and really support them. And if they don't know what they want to do, then the parents' role is to expose them. So middle school as well, summer programs for different things. Parents, put your kids in stuff that's free, because they may walk away and say, oh my gosh, mommy, that program was great. I think I want to do X, Y, and Z. They're not going to know if they're not exposed to it. So that's the importance of middle school, is to start that exposure to different careers and talking to adults that are doing things, or talking to someone you never had any clue about it. But now you're seeing it from someone who's in it and either loves the job or hates it. And you want to get both points of view too, because, okay, why do you not like this job? What about it do you not like? So you can make an educated decision for yourself.
Yeah, and just hearing you speak made me think about the need for mechanics too. The car doctors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I
Yes.
love the example that you gave when you told the student to look around the building, because there's a lot of things that we use on a daily basis that we don't necessarily think about the maker of that or how
Mhm.
that product came to be. So that was
Mhm.
really inspirational. Speaking about equity in education or even exposure, through your webinar series with the National Alliance for the Advancement of Haitian Professionals, NAAHP, you speak to a lot of first generation and immigrant families. What unique financial barriers do they face, and how can they overcome them?
I think for some families, it's not really understanding what's available and letting them know, for instance, with finances in New Jersey. So you may not qualify for federal money, for instance, if you're undocumented, but in the state of New Jersey, there are funding. So that way I can help families to understand that, okay, if your child wants to go off to college, they can. They may not be able to go out of state, but there are so many, so I don't even know the number of schools in New Jersey. There's plenty of schools that you can attend and still get financing for it. So that's the one thing to help them. And then, of course, if there's a language barrier, just being able to help them understand what different terms and things mean, especially if they're Haitian. So I can talk with them with that. And then through the webinar, we bring on different people from different careers, because sometimes people don't know exactly what does that career mean, so that's pretty much what we do, but really helping them understand that your education is affordable for you.
That brings me to the power of the village. You are an active leader, as we can hear from your college cafe adventures and your role with women's wellness, and even your role with the local board of health. And the list goes on to Delta Sigma Theta and the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, as well as the National Council of Negro Women. How do you find the energy to pour into so many organizations? And how do they feed your soul?
So I think with all of them, I end up joining committees that support what I already do on a regular basis. So with Delta Sigma Theta, I'm co-chair for the emergency response team. And so what a part of what we do is when we have different events, there's a message to have people look at the exit, kind of like when you go to the movie and they tell you, okay, look at the exits. That's like one of our roles. And then also during disasters in the area, we call up the membership to say, hey, how are you doing? There's power outage. What do you need? So that's kind of like what I do as a health person. Then we do other different programs related to that. And then with the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, I'm chair for the education committee, and I've also been part of the scholarship program. So again, pretty much what I'm doing, again, stuff I'm doing in the evening, doing with the students. And so what I try to do as well is the organizations tend to partner. So I'll know who the chair is for physical and mental health with Delta, and I'll know who the health chair is for Coalition. Just say, hey, maybe there's a program that we can do together. So really trying to have my worlds coexist and being able to, because you can't be all places at once. And thankfully, none of the meetings actually happen at the same time. So lots of meetings, but just trying to have everyone coexist. And then also the National Council of Negro Women has partnerships with the organizations anyway. So again, a lot of the programs that we do, we're trying to partner with the other ones because you're talking to the same demographic in the area. So why should one organization do one program today? I'll take February for Go Red Day. Why should two organizations do programs with 25 people each? Because people will decide, okay, do I go here or do I go there? Let's partner. We'll have 50 people. So it's a matter of combining our resources to be able to be more impactful, because just like we feel stressed of going to stuff, the people too are tired. They're working, they got kids. So how do we make it that we're maximizing the time that they're there so that they can get what they need to bring home to their families? So those are how my worlds coexist.
And how do they feed your soul? Because you are so involved. What is it that you're getting out of being a member of all these organizations? And if I'm not mistaken, you recently joined the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, correct?
Right. That was in fall of 2020. Yeah.
What prompted that?
Well, I wanted to join Delta ever since I was an undergrad, but it didn't happen then. And so I graduated college, life happened, and you didn't really think about it. I would go to the events. And then when the opportunity came, I put in an application and went through the process. So how it feeds my soul, I think, with the friendships I've made outside of it, because you'll meet up with people outside of the meetings and just having that support system, a network of women you can just chill with and talk to about certain things, and you're all going through the same process. Although the difference with joining a grad chapter versus undergrad, and undergrad, you're pretty much probably the same age range, maybe a 1 to 2 year difference. Joining a grad chapter, different ages. So now we probably had a lifespan probably between the youngest to the oldest on my line of 30, probably about a 40-year age difference. So now we're all at different stages. We've got the women joining who just getting into their career. You've got those of us who are already in our careers, who are married. You've got the single ones, and you have some who are towards the end of their careers, who are now grandparents. So everyone's at a different stage, but we still have that one thing in common of being members of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and the public service, which is one of our big things, scholarship and service. So you have that common thing, but my soul being fed is knowing that I did something that's helping somebody else. Being on the emergency response team committee, calling a member to say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for calling me. I'm fine, I'm okay, but I appreciate the phone call. Or through coalition, when you're at an event and you're doing a program for students, and a parent will say, oh my gosh, thank you for that. So just the satisfaction that you're meeting people where they are. So that to me, and I get it from my parents, they were always helping somebody do something. So it kind of comes naturally because my husband will say, oh my gosh, he's like, you're doing so much. But that's where my joy comes out of knowing that something I said to someone is helping them to, for their life to be better.
Certainly. And the fact that you mentioned your parents, you deeply credit your late parents for your love of education and service. Tell us about the school your father helped start in Haiti. How does supporting that school today keep their memory alive for you?
Well, so my dad, for many years, would go back and forth to visit his hometown. My mom too. And so, especially my mom, when she's going back to Haiti, would have a suitcase full of things to give away to people. And my father's town is very unique in that it's almost remote in a way. It's about 15 miles from a major town where the road is paved to a certain point. And then afterwards, especially during rainy season in the summer, because it's along the banks of a river, it overflows, the road is muddy, you can't drive in. So you're either take going by horseback or you're going by boat. Education-wise, these schools that were funded by the government kind of stopped at sixth or seventh grade. So if you weren't able to pay for your children to go to school in the next town, then pretty much their education would stop. And so my dad, in his frequent visits, would have meetings with some of the townspeople. They would came to him and say, look, Reverend Alert, we need a school. We have to do something for the town. And so that's how he became part of the team to start the school in 2007. And in 2010, they were able to build a building. And that was my last time in the town when they actually inaugurated the building, which, in addition to being a school, when they've had certain of the hurricanes that came through, the building also became a shelter for people if their homes were destroyed. So it's not just a school day to day, but it's also a big part of the community. So to me, that's what I feel is especially my father's legacy, in that we have to remember. And when I talk especially to my siblings, I said, you know what? We could have been those students living in that town and hoping that someone is going to make a contribution to help pay the teacher. Because some of the parents can't even afford the tuition. It's like maybe $200 American a year, which is nothing compared to what we pay here. But for some of those families, they really can't afford that. So I say to myself, okay, what would my life have been if my dad wasn't able to come to the US and bring us all? Well, I'm the only one who was born in Haiti, but the fact that I was able to come here, all seven of us he could have married my mom and stayed in Haiti, or they moved to Gunsight, and we would have never had an opportunity to come to the United States. So that's why I feel like it's important to give back in that way and support the teachers to make sure they get paid and to be able to send money to if the kids need to be fed during the day or repairs on the building, because that's a reality. So to me, that's the legacy that I'm helping to keep alive. Because people will tell you some of the teachers were there from the beginning with my dad. And so they'll tell me stories that I may not have gotten from him, but they'll say, well, this is what happened and everything. So to me, it's important in keeping his memory and that legacy. And of course, you want that, just like here, you want your kids to be educated, have careers, same thing with them too, for them to be able to have careers and support their families. So same thing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that $200. It's all about perspective, but 200 still
Mhm.
does seem like a lot of money.
Right.
Although
Right.
we're comparing it to tuition in America, looking at a country that has a cost of living of, I don't know what it is, but $200 is definitely steep, especially if unemployment rates are high. I'm just thinking about the hardships that people go through across the world in many cases to be able to secure education. And depending on the location, whether it be $50 or $200 or even needing school uniforms, how it could really feel like a burden. not hardship. So I'm glad to hear that there are efforts to be able to support education for youth in Haiti.
Yeah, it's really important because we import a lot, and remembering as a child going back to visit, and from the last trips I've done there, things have changed. We don't grow as much. We used to have rice. There was certainly that we used to export. We import a lot of the things now. So a lot of parents will have, like, when you go to the market, that's what they're doing. They're selling food on the side, or they might have little things almost like going to a flea market type of thing. That's what they're selling. Some people you may have professionals who are doctors, lawyers, engineers, or may have different shops. But part of the issue we've had is with, unfortunately, the gang violence now, you're not able to fly into the main airport. So people are surviving. But in the northern part of the country, you can go to Cap Haitian, fly into there. The southern part, there's an airport, but the middle part is really suffering in some ways. So, or people on the outskirts, like in Gunsight and other smaller towns that may not have a straight road to get to major things. So if you don't have a horse, how are you getting there? By foot, and that may not seem feasible living here in a country where you have buses and trains and a van, or we've got Uber and Lyft, things like that. But how do you do it in a country where that may not be possible?
And even city bikes or bikes, right?
Right.
And e-scooters. So
Mhm.
you definitely make a great point. Skateboards,
Right.
the list goes on.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, in terms of a final takeaway, if you had to distill your 30 plus year journey of nursing, education, and advocacy into one piece of advice for the next generation of leaders trying to make a difference, what would it be?
I would say to follow your heart, follow your gut, and never think that anything is impossible. My parents, again, are my inspiration because they came to this country. They had degrees from Haiti, but had to go through doing TOEFL and things like that to finish getting their degrees. But they did them while raising seven children. My dad was a full-time pastor, full-time job. My mom working in the city and doing. I say, in this country, the opportunity is there. So find what motivates you and find the village to support you, and then do it because it's possible. Don't stay locked into, oh, I don't know anybody. Ask the questions. There's so much in social media. Go on Instagram, Google, or go in your church, talk to someone, but figure out what it is you want to do. And if you get to a roadblock, okay, then ask someone, then say, okay, this is what I want to go. This is where I want to go, but I'm stuck. How do I get unstuck? So use your resources. There are plenty of them out there. Don't feel like you can't accomplish it because no one else has done it. You can do it. There's more than likely someone who's done it before, maybe not exactly like you. You may not find a nurse who's like me, who got a bio degree, went and did nursing, and now has a doctorate. But I can help you navigate the process to become what you want and then connect you to somebody. Oh, yeah, I know someone who's in that. So I'm in different chat groups on WhatsApp with women who are entrepreneurs, and I could find you somebody who's going to help you do what you need to do. I've met people who want to have businesses. I'm like, oh, well, go to score.org. You'll get a free mentor. There's things you can do that are not going to cost you money. So my thing is, do what you want to do, find your supports, and then use the resources so that you can accomplish what you need to do. Because it's not about now, it's about the future. And as women, especially, our kids need to see that we're resilient and that we can multitask, which may not be a good thing, but for them to be able to see that you are doing, if you have a husband who's helping, great, but what about the moms who aren't? You can still do it. Now you definitely need a village to watch your kids if you got to go to class at night or to pick them up for you from school. So use your village. You don't have to do things alone.
I love that. Use your village. You don't have to do things alone. And so you've been officially educated
Thank
about the Doctor of Education degree. If you found today's conversation made you think, made you laugh, made you dream bigger, hit subscribe, leave a comment or a review, and share this episode. Your support helps these stories reach more people who are interested and ready to take the leap on their leadership journey. Thank you, Dr. Sadler. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, keep finding new ways to innovate and become ed-dicted.